and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. Iran's former president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says US sanctions on Tehran are ugly and immoral. In an exclusive interview with Indus News, the Iranian politician said differences between Washington and Tehran can be resolved through respect and justice. Ahmadinejad said he feels sorrow for the people in Indian-occupied Kashmir and hopes soon they will have a chance to choose their future. He said, like other human values such as freedom, democracy, and justice, the devilish powers have digressed the UN from its main mission. Ahmadinejad's complete interview can be watched on Indus News at 1500 UTC. President Joe Biden says the U.S. will respond in a robust and meaningful way if Russia engages in harmful activities. Addressing U.S. troops in Britain, Biden reiterated Washington's desire for a stable and predictable relationship with Moscow. The U.S. president arrived in the U.K. on his first international visit since assuming the office in January. In Afghanistan's northern Baghlan province, at least 6 security personnel have been killed and 10 others wounded in a Taliban car bomb attack near a military base. The Taliban also claim to have destroyed a large number of tanks and other military equipment. China's top legislature has passed a law backing Beijing's actions to counter foreign sanctions. The legislation was passed at the closing session of the National People's Congress Standing Committee. This comes a day after the U.S. Senate approved a sweeping bill intended to boost the country's ability to compete with China. India has reported world's highest 6,148 deaths from COVID-19 with more than 94,000 cases overnight. Meanwhile, Pakistan has registered 76 fatalities and just over 1,300 infections in the past 24 hours. The global number of coronavirus infections has crossed 74 million, with more than 3.7 million deaths. Well, those were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now to news in detail. Iran's former president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says U.S. sanctions on Tehran are ugly and immoral. He said that during an exclusive interview with Indus News. The Iranian politician said differences between Washington and Tehran can be resolved through respect and justice. Ahmadinejad said he feels sorrow for the people in Indian-occupied Kashmir and hoped soon they will have a chance to choose their future. Commenting on UN's role in resolving international issues, he said UN General Assembly should rule instead of Security Council. He said, like other human values such as freedom, democracy, and justice, the devilish powers have digressed the UN from its main mission. He continued to say that Muslim countries' unity can give rise to a powerful bloc. Ahmadinejad's complete interview can be watched on Indus News at 1500 UTC. President Joe Biden says the U.S. will respond in a robust and meaningful way if Russia engages in harmful activities. He arrived in the U.K. on his first international visit since assuming the office in January. Addressing U.S. troops in Britain, Biden said Washington does not see conflict with Russia. He reiterated Washington's desire for a stable and predictable relationship with Moscow. Meanwhile, the U.S. president also hailed his country's unwavering commitment to the NATO alliance, but stressed that the alliance needs to modernize and expand its cyber capabilities to meet challenges. During the 8-day trip, Biden seeks to rebuild transatlantic ties strained during the Trump era and to reframe relations with Russia.
At every point along the way, we're going to make it clear that the United States is back and democracies of the world are standing together to tackle the toughest challenges and the issues that matter most to our future. that we're committed to leading with strength, defending our values, and delivering for our people.
Biden will meet Russian President Vladimir Putin next week after separate summits with NATO, G7, and European leaders. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has issued a directive to revive alliances and boost deterrence to counter China. The internal directive builds on the final recommendations from Pentagon's task force on China. In a statement, the Pentagon said the initiative aims to streamline cooperation with allies, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. It said the efforts will accelerate the development of new operational concepts. However, the details of the initiative, some of which are classified, are still unclear. The Biden administration's defense budget has called for shifting billions in spending to modernize the military to deter China. Beijing has repeatedly dismissed such actions by the U.S. as hysterical, driven by a Cold War mentality. In Afghanistan's northern Baghlan province, at least 6 security personnel have been killed and 10 others wounded in a Taliban car bomb attack near a military base. The military has confirmed the attack on the base located in Bagh-e-Shamal area of the Pul-e-Khumri city of the province. The military said the explosive-laden car was intercepted by the security forces before reaching its target. However, the Taliban also claimed to have destroyed a large number of tanks and other military equipment in the attack. Israeli forces have killed 3 Palestinians and wounded another during a raid in the West Bank city of Jenin. The Palestinian Health Ministry said 2 officers of the Palestinian Authority's military intelligence service are among those killed. Israeli forces raided the town and opened fire on security personnel outside the Palestinian military intelligence headquarters. Israeli media says the occupying forces were conducting an operation to arrest 2 suspects. But the Palestinian Authority says the Israeli Defense Forces did not inform them about any such operation. The Israeli army has refused to comment on the incident. A Russian serviceman has been killed in a bomb attack on a military patrol vehicle in the Syrian governorate of Hasaka. The Russian Defense Ministry said 3 other soldiers were wounded in the explosion. The ministry said that the armored vehicle was detonated with an unidentified explosive device. It added that the wounded soldiers are in stable condition. India has reported the world's highest 6,148 deaths from COVID-19, with more than 94,000 cases overnight. India's massive jump in fatalities came after its eastern state of Bihar added around 4,000 at-home deaths that were previously unaccounted. Previously, the U.S. had the highest single-day death toll, with nearly 5,500 fatalities. Brazil is approaching 500,000 COVID-19 deaths after more than 2,700 people died and over 85,000 tested positive overnight. Meanwhile, as poorer nations struggle to fund inoculation drives, Pfizer has pledged to provide the U.S. with 500 million COVID-19 vaccines to donate to the world. In Australia, locally transmitted cases continue to rise in Victoria State as its capital, Melbourne, prepares to come out of a 2-week hard lockdown. However, Canada has taken a cautious first step towards easing COVID-19 border restrictions for fully vaccinated citizens. The global number of coronavirus infections has crossed 74 million, with more than 3.7 million deaths. In Pakistan, 76 more people have died due to coronavirus over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the country's death toll has reached 21,529. The ministry reported over 1,300 infections overnight, pushing the nationwide caseload above 937,000. There are currently more than 2,900 critical cases in the country, while over 871,000 people have recovered from the virus so far. The ministry said more than 41,000 tests were conducted in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, Pakistan has made COVID-19 vaccination mandatory for employees of both private and government organizations. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has lauded Pakistan's army for anti-polio efforts. President Global Development Program Christopher Elias called on Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa in Rawalpindi. They discussed matters related to Pakistan's commitment to disease prevention. Allies appreciated Pakistan's successful COVID-19 pandemic campaign and Pakistan Army's tremendous contribution in containing transmission. Bajwa said polio eradication is a national cause and acknowledged the services of health workers. China's top legislature has passed a law backing Beijing's actions to counter foreign sanctions. This comes a day after the U.S. Senate approved a sweeping bill intended to boost the country's ability to compete with China. The bill underwent a secret first review in April and was passed by the National People's Congress Standing Committee. The legislation was passed at the closing session of the National People's Congress Standing Committee. A Foreign Ministry spokesperson says the approval shows China's determination to protect its sovereignty and core interest. Wang Wenbin says the law will not affect its relations with other countries, but details of the law have not yet been made public. Russian President Vladimir Putin says at least 50% of Ukrainians do not want their country to join NATO. In an interview, Putin said these Ukrainian residents do not want to wind up on the firing line. They don't want to be bargaining chips or cannon fodder. He blamed Kiev for violating the Minsk agreements about the war in the eastern Donbass region. Putin did not indicate where he got his information on Ukrainian public opinion.
There is half and half, but at least 50% of Ukrainians are against its membership in NATO, and those are smart people. I'm saying it without any irony and without portraying others as dull. Those who are against Ukraine's membership in NATO understand that they do not want to find themselves at the firing line.
The Russian president also criticized Ukraine's proposed bill on indigenous people, calling it a blow for ethnic Russians. And now moving on, 12 people have been killed after a military plane crashed near Myanmar's second biggest city of Mandalay. State media says the plane was flying from the capital Naypyidaw to the town of Pyon O Laveen. Local media says the aircraft carried 6 military personnel and monks going to attend a ceremony. It was not immediately clear what had caused the crash. In another development, new corruption cases have been opened against Tipo's leader Aung San Suu Kyi. State media says she has now been accused of accepting $600,000 and 11.2 kilograms of gold in bribe. Meanwhile, nationwide protests for the restoration of democracy continued despite the military killing over 850 people since the coup. In India's large city of Mumbai, at least 11 people, including 8 children, have died after a residential building collapsed on top of another building. Officials said 17 others are injured while rescue workers are searching for survivors beneath the rubble. They added 9 members of a family are among those dead in the incident following the first downpour of the monsoon season. The police have registered a case of culpable homicide against the contractor of the building. Incidents of building collapses become more common in India's financial capital of Mumbai during the monsoon. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The world's oldest cave painting is on the verge of decomposition. Experts are struggling to preserve the priceless prehistoric artwork in Indonesia. Details in this report. Discovered in 2017, this painting in a limestone cave in Indonesia's island of Sulawesi is thought to be over 45,000 years old. The Pleistocene rock art depicting animals, hand stencils, and human-like figures appears to be the earliest known pictorial record of storytelling. But in recent years, experts found that ancient art is slowly being erased due to climate-induced salt efflorescence.
Mengambil beberapa sampel pigment.
We took some pigment samples and analyzed them in the lab. Finally, we came to the conclusion, as we already know through the published study, that the art is peeling off the wall because of climate change. It is accelerating the exfoliation of the cave surface.
Warming temperatures and the increasing severity of El Niño events have expedited the exfoliation process.
faktor kerusakan.
The biggest damage that we encounter on the field is the occurrence of peeling. The pigment that makes up the image on the cave wall is peeling off. The pigment is peeling from the wall. If you look at it in detail, it's not just the pigment that came off, but the stone surface where the pigment is attached to is also peeling off.
Almost 1.4 square centimeters of the painting had been peeled off from October 2018 to March 2019.
In England, a huge sculpture made out of scrap metal and electronics has been built on Cornwall Beach ahead of the G7 summit. Resembling the iconic Mount Rushmore, it features the heads of G7 leaders. Details in this report.
As G7 leaders arrive in southern England this week, they will be greeted by a multi-story sculpture of their heads. Because of its close resemblance to Mount Rushmore in the United States, the artwork has been nicknamed Mount Recyclemore by its creators Joe Rush and Alex Wreckage. Made out of electronic waste, the sculpture aims to highlight the huge amount of tech and gadgets that go unrecycled each year.
What we've done here is we've depicted the 7 main characters of the G7 conference, with Boris Johnson on the left and Joe Biden on the
far
right.
left.
Yeah, on the far left, yeah. And basically it's to make them, to sort of say, you've got to work together on this one. You've got to build it into the way we do things, that we can recycle things, that we can repair things, and that we don't just waste things.
Music Magpie, the company that commissioned the unusual artwork, contributed most of the 20,000 items used in the sculpture. It runs an e-commerce website where people buy and sell second-hand electronic goods.
70% of the toxicity that goes into landfill comes from e-waste, and actually we're the UK's biggest mobile phone recycler at Music Magpie, and actually people don't know in that phone there's some really precious metals, so there's gold, there's silver, there's platinum, but there's some really also very nasty ones, so there's lead and there's mercury and there's even arsenic.
According to the United Nations, over 53 million tons of e-waste was generated worldwide in 2019. This was 9 million tons more than 5 years earlier.
The US and China have agreed to push forward trade and investment links. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo spoke to her Chinese counterpart Wang Wentao in the third round of trade talks. China's Commerce Ministry says the two sides also agreed to handle their differences properly. In a statement, the ministry said both leaders exchanged views frankly on relevant issues. They stressed the importance of the US-China dialogue and communication in business and trade. The ministry added Washington and Beijing agreed to maintain communication. El Salvador has become the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. With 62 votes, lawmakers approved President Nayib Bukele's proposal to accept the cryptocurrency. Bukele says the use of Bitcoin will help Salvadorans living abroad to send remittances back home. Under the law, Bitcoin must be accepted by firms when offered as payment for goods and services. Its use as legal tender will begin in 90 days with the Bitcoin-dollar exchange rate set by the market. Cryptocurrency supporters hailed the move, but its impact on taxation or adoption in other countries remains to be seen. China has arrested more than 1,000 people suspected of using the profits from crime to buy cryptocurrencies. On its official WeChat account, the Ministry of Public Security said police busted more than 170 criminal groups involved in using cryptocurrencies to launder money. The groups converted illegal proceeds into virtual currencies via crypto exchanges. It added they charged their criminal clients a commission of 1.5 to 5%. China's Bitcoin mines power nearly 80% of the global trade in cryptocurrencies. All the trading is banned. European bourses are struggling for direction as global markets gear up for the latest inflation reading from the US. The Pan-European Stock 600 and Frankfurt DAX are trading flat. Italy's FTSE MIB has dipped over 0.5%, while the CAC 40 in Paris has also shed fractionally. However, London's FTSE has gained marginally. Earlier, most Asian stocks traded in positive territory. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.